evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on top stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. In a controversial move that has raised alarms amongst Ambazonians, President Biyas' government is mobilizing traditional rulers, including fonts and chiefs, to engage in community dialogue with the Ambazonian State Army across southern Cameroun. Intelligence sources suggest that the initiative is largely aimed at co-opting local leaders, some allegedly aligned with the government, to project a facet of reconciliation. Critics warn that the effort could quickly shift from dialogue to intimidation if local resistance proves unyielding, showing the fragile state of negotiation in the southern Cameroun. Ambazonia leadership has reaffirmed this long-standing position that any negotiation with Yaoundé must occur from a position of strength, rejecting attempts at manipulation or coercion. Analysts view the move as part of a broader strategy by the Biyas administration to weaken the Ambazonian networks while asserting control over communities in the southern Cameroons. As tension simmer, observers caution that the outcome of these dialogues could significantly influence the trajectory of the conflict, which has already claimed thousands of lives and displaced countless others over the past decade. The question is, why have the negotiation with fonts and chiefs when the principals who deserves to have these negotiations are waiting at the negotiation table? All these and more will delve into tonight's Undaunted, but first, let's get the prime headlines. Tonight on Undaunted, the streets in Ambazonia, business institutions and offices remains closed today, Monday 10th of November 2025, in respect of Monday Ghost Town. Also today, on Undaunted, abductions and arrests mar French Cameroon's post-election period as two of presidential candidate Issa Bakare's followers have been picked up by men in French Cameroon's uniform. Cameroon opposition leader eats his ultimatum after disputed election. Tonight on Undaunted, we'll take a look at Joshua Osih's political decline as it marks the end of an era for the SDF. On the African scene, African Union chief urges swift global action as Mali faces escalating jihadist violence and humanitarian crisis. While on the global scene, BRICS surge signals a new global order as Western economies stall. Now let's get the news in full briefings. The capital of Bamenda, the capital of the Ambazonians and southern Cameroons, remained early silent today as residents observed their traditional Ghost Town Day. A mass civil shutdown that has become a defining feature of Ambazonians' ongoing struggle for French independence. From early morning, the usual bustling streets of Commercial Avenue, Nkwame, and Meter Quarter were deserted. Shops, schools, transport agencies, and public offices stayed closed, their doors firmly shut in compliance with the movement. Only a few pedestrians could be seen, and the occasional sound of a motorbike or military vehicle echoed through the city's quiet streets. The Ghost Town strategy, which began several years ago as a weekly protest, has evolved into a powerful tool of non-violent resistance. Residents voluntarily stay indoors every Monday and on special occasions to express solidarity with the Ambazonian independent movement and to protest what they have described as political marginalization and military oppression by the Yaoundé-based administration. Today's total shutdown came in the wake of renewed calls for unity from Amazonian leaders in the diaspora, urging citizens to remain steadfast in their demand for sovereignty. Reports indicate that compliance across Bamenda was nearly total, underscoring the population's continued commitment to the cause despite years of leadership, hardship, insecurity, and economic strain. The people have spoken through silence, said a local resident who requested to be anonymous for safety reasons. By staying indoors, they are sending a strong message that they want freedom, peace, and recognition as Ambazonians. The Ambazonian crisis, which began in 2016 following protests by teachers and lawyers over linguistics and cultural discriminations and all other marginalization, has since escalated into full-blown conflict. Groups now control parts of Ambazonians, while government forces maintain a heavy presence in some areas. The war has displaced hundreds of thousands of persons, led to widespread humanitarian concerns. For many in Bamenda, today's shutdown was not just a protest, but also a symbolic show of unity following the recent reaffirmation of leadership within the Ambazonian movement. As residents acknowledged the president chosen by the people, President Zako, the atmosphere of calm and defiance reflected both loyalty and resilience. As night fell, Bamenda remains wrapped in silence, its people united in quiet protest, holding on to hope that their voices, though expressed in stillness, will one day be heard by the world as they hope to return back to work tomorrow, Tuesday. Barrister Mbesha, welcome to tonight's Undaunted.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And of course, after post-elections, Buhaha and all of that, Ambazonians are still steadfast with the Monday ghost down and lockdown, and they all respecting it as it should be. I'm sure you're impressed.
Well, I'm impressed, but remain almost silent. You see, if someone was expecting something in Ambazonia because of elections, then you did not understand Ambazonia, who were in principle not concerned with the elections. And so the elections were intended to bring normalcy to their country. They hoped that if normalcy returned to their country, we would but again return to Ambazonia, which is not true. That's why the ghost towns are important to be analyzed in that angle. But why is on that? You see, Ambazonia is not Bamenda. Bamenda is only one town, one of the several towns in Ambazonia. Ghost towns have repeated themselves all over Ambazonia. But why do we focus on Bamenda or call it Meza? The reason is simple. Over the past 7 years, the administration has centered so much on Bamenda. They believed that if things were normal in Bamenda, it would mean that they are normal in Ambazonia. Yeah, they have always mistaken to say that only Yaoundé breathes, Cameroun breathes. That is not right. But they have invested so much in the whole idea of ghost towns in Ambazonia in general and in Bamenda in particular. For example, they have brought the French ambassador, which is the French government, to Bamenda. to pretend to say that normalcy is supposed to return by making false promises of whatever thing they wanted to do. They wanted to reconstruct Bamenda. They wanted to bring insecurity. They wanted to do this. They wanted to do that. But all these things have failed. And so we have remained steadfast. The world is learning from us. Cameroon is learning from Ambazonia that a people without arms, a people without guns can bring attention to their plight through civil disobedience. Because lockdown is civil disobedience. The Bamenda administration, like any other one in Ambazonia, has come to acknowledge that over the past 7 years, they have not stopped it. They have used all the methods, locking up physically, locking up their stores to be sure that they don't open because they locked. But they have failed, and they have failed woefully. And so we remain where we are. We would rather fortify our lockdowns as need be. We would rather strengthen our agencies and our government structures to let the world know that the problem is not solved. Our problem of Ambazonia was never the elections in Cameroon, whether they were electing Mr. Paul Biya or someone else. That is not important. Anybody elected in Bamenda is still the opponent of Ambazonia, which is why I personally have always said that come October, there will be somebody in Yaoundé, be it Paul Biya, be it Chiroma, or anybody, any other person. You will have to face the problem of Ambazonia head on. And so again, this is a reminder to the world that the problems in Cameroon with the elections don't concern us. This is a message to the world that the Ambazonia problem is not yet solved. It will only be solved when they do one single thing, when they come to the conference table without preconditions to address the root causes of the problem. Let it be under Mr. Paul Biya, let it be under Mr. Chiroma, let it be under Frank Biya or any other person. That's the goal. And until that is done, they are wasting their time. The ghost towns will not stop. They will rather fortify. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Moving on, the post-election period in French Cameroon has been marked by a wave of abductions and arrests, targeting supporters of President-elect Issa Chiroma Bakare Abubakar Hamadu, a member of the National Front for the Salvation of Cameroon, was abducted by men in uniform in Gaudi, Adamawa region on November 9, 2025. His whereabouts remain unknown. In a similar incident, Amadou Bello, former member of the ruling CPDM, who joined the FSNC, was kidnapped in Ngondari by armed men in plain clothes. No information has been received about his condition or whereabouts. These incidents have sparked concerns about the President Paul Biya's regime's commitment to democracy and human rights. Observers and rights groups say the regime is using fear and repression to cling to power. Despite losing the election, the abductions are part of a larger pattern of intimidation and persecution against citizens demanding justice and democratic change. The international community is urged to take note of the deteriorating situation in French Cameroon and to call on the President Biya's regime to respect the rule of law and the will of the people. Mbesha.
Yes. The issue now is what is going on in our neighbor, Republic of Cameroon, after the elections, before, during, and after. It's a well-programmed agenda of despotism, of dictatorship. The arrest of people, detention, or whatever thing is happening there, it did not start today. It didn't start after the election. It started way in advance, when the elections were being prepared for. So it is a well-organized dictatorship. It's a well-organized method of fraud. Because they knew this in advance. They knew that people will resist. And so if you see their response, it's not something that is spontaneous. No. It was well planned. You can see examples. Before the elections were even due to start in Cameroon, a would-be candidate come to, was never allowed to move around freely. He went to France, private trip. He's coming back from France as a private individual. But they suspect that he went there and contacted people who would eventually vote for him. Parapa Ndwala stormed the whole airport, they arrested him, locked up his people, kept him in prison, prevented him from moving left and right. That was well in advance before the elections were ever called. During the election process, which is presentation of voters, what did they do? They destroyed the whole process themselves and refused to be accountable, refused even to respect their own electoral code, article by article, refused to publish the list of voters. It was well programmed, and they knew that at least there they have people who are Democrats. That they will resist that. What did they do? They prepare in advance. They will lock you up. They will shoot and kill you if that is necessary to make sure that you abide by their rules. And then after the elections, what is going on there is not new. They are doing it is well programmed. What I've got to say there, for example, that somebody who was supporting Issa Chiroma has been adopted by unnamed armed men. Where? Somewhere in the north, unnamed armed men. Does it make sense to us? Yes. Have Ambazonia heard enough of unidentified armed men killing people in Ambazonia? Unnamed armed men adopting people in Bamenda, in Boya, anywhere in Ambazonia. So who are these unnamed armed men? The government says investigations are continuing. That's far as Ambazonia is concerned. It is now being replicated over in their own country. And so who are these unnamed armed men? Critics always said, as far as Ambazonia is concerned, oh, the Amba boys, Amba fighters. Have they transformed themselves into somewhere in northern Cameroon to be adopting people there? Certainly not. So, but it tells a lot about the adoption of political critics, those who ever criticize the regime there. You are either caught physically alive, you are adopted privately and killed, or if not just tortured, for you to submit. And that's the style. That's the best that dictatorship has. It has been exported to Ambazonia. It is now back home, haunting them. The shooting and arresting of people in the streets, most of the time over there now after the elections, they are there. They are not doing it in Ambazonia. But Ambazonia has been doing this for the past, undergoing this for the past 9 years. And so, does the world see what is happening? Is it that Ambazonians were just the beginning? Of course. Why? Because the mounted resistance, the mounted opposition just goes down to make their plight known. And now, over there, it is being replicated in the same way. People are being adopted and called unidentified gunmen. People are being picked up in the streets for not supporting the government. And so, history repeats itself. It's a good thing that we learn from it. We just hope, we pray that the world is watching. The whole world, civilized world is watching. And then they will not forget where this adoption, where these killings, where this mass arrest started. As far as Cameroun is concerned, it started in Ambazonia. For what? To make Ambazonians accept what the regime tells them, to silence them from ever criticizing them. Is this a regime that should exist in the world? It could, but should it include people that don't belong to it, like Ambazonians? It should not. And that's the reason why we fight. Their gangsterism will end, but it must end in Ambazonia because we've never been part of it. You don't export your criminality to where it doesn't belong. And so that's what they have inside. We don't know how their problem will end. But again, the best lesson that the world is learning is that it is not all what has been said in Ambazonia was not new, was really a truth. They are not the Amba boys doing that thing in Douala, Yaoundé, Bafoussam, Bafang, North, and so on. They are not Amba boys. They are not Amba fighters. They are unnamed armed men. Who are these unnamed armed men? Can we say they are Atangaji boys? Of course, it's the Minister of Treasury Mission. The Treasury Minister can extend it right there. Can they say they belong also to Ngala Gerard? Of course, it's possible. He's neighbor to northern Cameroon. And so we have been vindicated 1,000 times over. That's what we can say about it. Again, the world is watching. We hope the civilized world is seeing what we've been fighting for, and that will lead us to somewhere more positive than negative. Over to you.
Of course, Barrister Mbesha, more positive than negative. Still on this, intelligence sources have revealed that President Biyas' regime has summoned traditional rulers, including funds and chiefs, to initiate what is being described as community dialogue session with the Ambazonian State Army across several communities in southern Cameroon, also known as Ambazonia. Well, according to reports, the Yaoundé administration has been reaching out to select traditional leaders, some of whom are believed to be under government influence in a bid to promote what critics have labeled to be manipulative peace tactics. Observers argue that the move is designed to project an image of reconciliation while in reality aiming to weaken local resistance movement and undermine the Ambazonian cause. Political analysts and local activists have cautioned that should this so-called dialogue initiative fail, the regime could resort to what is also going to be known as intimidation and coercive measures to assert control over communities sympathetic to the independence movement. But in response, we all know that the Ambazonian leadership has reiterated its long-standing stance that any negotiation with the Biyas government can only take place from a position of strength. The President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikometzako, has consistently emphasized that genuine dialogue must be based on equality and mutual respect, not manipulation or pressure. As tensions continues to simmer across the Ambazonians, many view this latest move as part of a broader strategy by the Yaoundé establishment to contain growing calls for independence and self-determination in southern Cameroon. And so, Barrister Mbesha, this reaction is coming in, and it begs to wonder, while negotiation with the funds to negotiate with the ASA, they're not the ones in charge. They are, of course, acting based on instruction. Why do you think, just like we are thinking, and just like some analysts have carefully stipulated, that this is, of course, a form of manipulation, and when this doesn't work, intimidation and coercion can actually come in? What would you say, Barrister?
I would say totally that if that story is true, it is pure destruction, absolute destruction. They are inviting the chiefs and whatever you call it to dialogue who and for who are these chiefs? The chiefs of the northwest and southwest, they call it, the funds or not, whatever thing they call it, of Ambazonia. To dialogue with who? Let me say, for example, do they have any disagreement among themselves? Certainly not. It's, for example, maybe I'm fighting a war with Momo, their neighbors. They are not fighting a thing. It's Fako fighting with Meme. Is Indian fighting a war with Meme or Manyo or Kupe Manegumba? No. So what are they trying to for? What is form to dialogue with? The dialogue, are they dialoguing in Dunia? If they want dialogue in America, dialogue with the government of Ambazonia. Do we have, as a government of Ambazonia, do we have any disagreement with any funds or chiefs? Certainly not. They might express their political opinion, but we don't need Yaoundé to tell us how to dialogue with them. They are free to think the way they think. But overall, the whole thing is an orchestrated thought is intended to fail. Because if they are talking about Ambazonian fighters, we don't mercenaries from Nigeria. All our fighters are home-based. The fighters in Momo are the majority Momo children. The fighters in Manyo or any other county, they are children of. Do they need anybody from Yaoundé to tell them how to go and dialogue with their others? So it's like they sit down and deceive people and say they are disarmed people, disarmament. disarming is the same. Yet who armed them so that of a dialogue from Yaoundé is what we call political fraud. Because why are they not organizing the chiefs of called the Littoral or the Vuri, the West among them, the Bastards? Then they're not. They're not doing it. What is Ambazonia? It dialogue from here. Again, there is no fighting among the chiefs or among the individual communities of Ambazonia. Call it Momo, call it Mezam, call it Ngwakutunja, Bui, Manyu, the BLM, only one anywhere else. We don't disagree with one another as Ambazonians. If we are fighting a war of liberation, in principle, those fronts are supposed, and they are really part of the struggle. Okay, we're trying to liberate them as well. But we do not rule out the possibility that there are a few of them there who disagree with what we do. We disagree with our own opinion. So be it. That's the modern world. That's how the world is. In the 1961-59, when we went off for independence, what all these things were called the chiefs' conferences. We had this thing they called the plebiscite. It was a big debate. Not every farm, not every chief, not every citizen was in the same camp. But at the end of the day, the votes were counted as the votes from Southern Cameroun. Simple as that. Even those who opposed. They didn't leave after we voted to join like the road to Cameroon. Those who disagreed, be they farms or chiefs or whatever, did not pack their things to go to Nigeria. They remained Ambazonians. And so this orchestrated dialogue, I don't know who is championing it here one day. If it is a Tanganji or somebody else, he needs to go back to school to learn what the Ambazonian struggle for the past 9 years has not been a disagreement between Ambazonian communities. It has not been a disagreement between Ambazonian chief of condoms. It has been a disagreement between a state called British Southern Cameroon and another state called the Republic of Cameroon. In other words, former French administered Cameroon. Context, they have their own chiefs. Context, we have the same thing. And so we have never disagreed with ourselves. No. The disagreement is not within us. And so we don't need assistance to dialogue. If we disagree, which sometimes we do, we know that difference, political, economic, wise. We don't need the assistance of Yaoundé to come and make us dialogue if there's a disagreement. But up to this point, there is no disagreement amongst Ambazonian chiefs or fronts or among Ambazonian communities, call them villages, call them fondants, or any name you give them there. We don't have disagreement. And so this is this attempt to fool the world. Because the problem that we have with like People Cameroon, which has not been solved, it is not lack of it is not lack of agreement between among our chiefs or fronts. No. It is lack of the goodwill from the people to Cameroon collectively. That includes their own chiefs and fronts, whatever thing they call them there. That they are not willing to come to this conference table and address the root causes of the problem. It is not a boundary dispute between Meza and Bunda. It is not a boundary dispute between Libelem and Mengo. Neither is it a boundary dispute between Komsamba or Littoral and Fako. And so let them stop all that charade. At least we're old enough, we're educated enough to know where the fault lines are. They cannot avoid the fault lines and go to the periphery and begin to make noise. The fault line is two states at war, two states in disagreement. British Southern Cameroon today called Ambazonia, and French administered Cameroon called the people to Cameroon. Once they address this, they really know that we will belong. Our chiefs, if need be, our funds, if need be, will be in our delegation to make peace with them when the time arrives. But they will not tell us, they will not dictate to us who shall be in our delegation. Neither shall we dictate to them who shall be in their own delegation. As simple as good morning. We wish them good luck. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. Meanwhile, still on this, Cameroon's political climate remains very volatile as opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakare issued a 48-hour ultimatum to the government, demanding the release of all protesters arrested in the aftermath of President Paul Biya's re-election. The ultimatum comes amid rising tensions and allegations of electoral fraud that have triggered violent confrontations between security forces and demonstrators across several cities. Chiroma, who officially secured 35.19% of the vote against Biyas 53.66%, has rejected the official results, declaring himself the rightful winner of the October presidential election. From exile in Nigeria, he has accused the government of systemic abuses, including arbitrary arrests, political intimidation, and what he described as ethnic discrimination in public institutions. The opposition leader has called on citizens to continue non-violent resistance through active civil disobedience, including the now frequent ghost town protests that have paralyzed economic activities in parts of the country. But according to newsmen citing United Nations sources, at least 48 people were killed during security crackdowns on post-election demonstrations alone through the Cameroonian government, despite this figure claiming that only 5 deaths have been confirmed. While human rights groups have expressed concern over the excessive use of force by security forces and the mass arrests of opposition leaders. President Paul Biya, who was officially sworn in for another term on Thursday, has appealed for calm and urged citizens to refrain from violence. In his inauguration speech, Biya emphasized national unity and warned against incitements from abroad, particularly from members of the group he called diaspora, and he's accusing them of fueling unrest. Could that be Chiroma? Well, Chiroma's ultimatum has deepened uncertainty in a country already facing multiple crises, including, the Ambazonian War of Independence and growing public discontent over economic hardship as the deadline approaches. Both the government and opposition supporters appears to be bracing for renewed confrontation, heightened fears of further instability in the Central African nation. Barrister Mbesha, this is quite, should we say, funny. Chiroma was once with this regime. He felt that he has the mind to control the situation and bring the right government to handle all of the challenges that people are facing. Somehow he was rigged out, or somehow he wasn't selected or elected to be in charge. And right now he's feeling a little bit of pain and calling for some shots and calling for all of the things he's calling for, including release of his men that were arrested and all of that. Do you think that with all of the things that Chiroma has been known for, what he has done before, how he's been part of this regime and all of that, do you think that he has the political mind and strength to be able to pull off all that he's trying to bring into the political scene when it comes to this post-election drama?
Well, nobody in the world, not just Cameroon, can deny the fact that Chiroma is a political figure that you cannot ignore in the context of Cameroon or in the context of Central Africa. Like him or not, he has emerged as somebody who can speak. He has emerged as a threat, the first threat to the government of Yaoundé. And so we can only say, I've said it many times, I don't know what his strategy is, but he's doing his best. They would get what they want if they fight for it. We can only hope that he has a better strategy to make sure that his voice is heard, that his calls are listened to. Where he gives an ultimatum, he makes sure it is respected. We are only observers. But what concerns us is his call for the release of people who have been arrested during the election process. Wonderful if they are released. But we've not heard him make the call for the release of hundreds and thousands of ambassadors in the past 9 years who did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. Sometimes they are arrested for years just for carrying a telephone where they can see a message. That call about Ambazonia. I've heard about 48 people dead. That looks like a mountain of graves. But he has forgotten, or we've forgotten to remember that not less than thousands of Ambazonians have been killed. Cold-bloodedly killed, openly shot and killed, without remorse. And of course, Mr. Chiroma was part of the government. We acknowledge the fact that he came to say, I'm sorry. But these are facts that he cannot change. If we must feel sorry for 48 Cameroonians arrested or killed because of election protests, then there must be a world mourning day for thousands of Ambazonians shot and killed in cold-blooded, for Mami Api, for the Ngabu children and pregnant women murdered in cold blood. And so, Chiroma, he's doing his best. We watch him carefully. We hope he succeeds. But if he doesn't succeed, so be it. But again, there is no way you will bring down a dictator with a peace plan. Dictatorship is brought down with the guns. Because dictatorship prevails with violence. You cannot bring down dictatorship with waving an orange branch. That's the error they have made all the time in Cameroon. People are being shot. You find women, men dancing in the street with some branches in the air, wanting peace. Guns don't listen to peace plans. Guns listen to guns. Soldiers don't listen to you talking. They see you act. When they kill you, they act when you break their limbs, when you break their heads, even with a stone. That's when they know the pain that you felt when they shot and killed you. That's when they know the pain that you felt when they burnt down your house for no good reason. And so, encouragement to Mr. Chiroma, let him give more ultimatums, but most importantly, let them be enforced. Because that's the beginning of the fall of a dictatorship. It is a mountain of difficulties. To bring down a century-old dictatorship, you must need bones, hardened bones that are in fact iron to bring it down. I hope Mr. Chiroma has those weapons. We hope he has the ability, the strategy to kill this mighty elephant, to bring down this mighty crime syndicate, headed by people who are on their dying bed. Paul Biya loses nothing because he knows that whether you take it over, he's on his way to hell. He's on his way to death. He's dying. So it's no longer about Paul Biya, about those who survive him and how they keep the loot that they've been taking for decades. How they keep the power that they've been usurping from the people for all the 40, 50 years that he has been in power. And so Chiroma is a threat. He issues ultimatums, welcome. Again, I remind them again, you will have what you deserve. Freedom will come, it's not cheap, it's expensive. The expense that you pay will include human lives. They will include many other things. Human life is the maximum that you can lose. Ambazonia has lost millions, thousands in that way. They will include the property that you have. Ambazonians have lost homes. They have lost everything in their lives, looking for freedom. And so, fight like Ambazonians. But when you win your battle, that's when the battle of Ambazonia starts with you. Because you come back and address the issues. And so both parties can now live in peace. Even as enemies, they will share a common boundary. And so congratulations to Mr. Chiroma for this to you. If we can help you, but unfortunately, our own hands are too full. It's not time for us to render you help. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. But are you saying that all of these that Chiroma Bakare is bringing to the fore, he might not be able to push that energy strong enough to pull the the political administration down in Yaoundé, but you're saying that the emphasis may be felt, or you're saying that if it does a push, they may not fall, but they will definitely know that there was a push. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. Item one, I said Chiruma, as an opposition leader, is not somebody you can ignore on the Cameroonian political scene. The Central African region as a whole cannot be ignored. People are watching Cameroon from the side of Chiroma. From around the world, from Paris to London to Washington, D.C., he's being watched. He's doing something that has never been done before. Shall he succeed? I didn't say he will not succeed. I simply said that I think he must have a strategy that does not announce to us. He has a strategy that he has all this support around the world. He's being watched around the world. He must have a strategy that will go beyond one ultimatum, asking them to release people. Suppose you're all released tonight, would the battle be over? Certainly not. You should then switch to the next gear of his strategy, because it will take years, it will take effort, it will take intellect to bring down a 45-year-old dictatorship. Once you have all these things put together, the regime will fall. Because as history, no dictatorship around the world has ever lasted forever. They always collapse at the end of the day. But you require muscles to bring them down. And I think, I just suggested, that Mr. Chiroma must have the muscles somewhere. They require more than ultimatums. And I think he must have the strategy. Those who in Yaoundé or somewhere else think that he can be ignored. He must be reading wrong history. You cannot ignore Chiroma. Then can you ignore his ultimatums? I would guess, if he's a politician, and he is, any word that is uttered from his mouth has a lot of political meaning, has a lot of weight. And so I cannot underestimate him. I cannot say what his outcome will be, but I can predict that if he insists on what he is doing and does it rightly, he will get what he wants. Because in politics, nothing comes for nothing. You get what you fight for. You get what you sacrifice for. And this thing they call sacrifice includes people dying, giving up lives. If the story is true, 48 people are already dead. What did they die for? If you cannot bring this into the end. If you don't bring it to the end, 100 other people will die. But even 100 deaths should not discourage you. Fight on, because it's better to live a free person than to die a slave. And so what I've said, I don't underestimate his power. I don't know his strategy, but wish him the best. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. Now let's get the video of this particular incident so that we are very clear on some things that is happening.
I give you, in my capacity, I give you 48 hours to liberate all of those who, out of law, unlawfully, you have arrested and jailed. Failing to doing it, Cameroonians will find themselves in a legitimate defense and free to undertake whatever will enable them to recover their freedom and to free their daughters and sons who are illegally imprisoned, jailed somewhere. This is the message I want to share. Cameroonian pass, if 48 hours, as I said, they refuse to comply, Cameroonian, they are in legitimate position to defend themselves, to defend their family, and to go retrieve their daughters and sons who are unlawfully and illegally have been arrested and jailed.
All right. There is another video would want to. There is another video would want to play. Then when we come back, you'll react to both of them.
My brother francophone them una be very, very dull. and the laugh una plenty. Una say Anglophone are full. Anglophone no get sense. We Anglophone pass una plenty. Now in that small shaking where government shaking una don't para. The one say they carry fish. You see for they get grow bra for carry for their gas. Francophone una they hungry. Una don't fight again. Una go clap out for Jesus. Una never say nothing. We Anglophone don't for 8 years. Una power that side say can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We need to go to place. We get Monday state. No shake. Francophone on the hungry. We don't get heart. We don't get mulema. Vous les francophones, vous êtes bêtes. Vous êtes witch. We don't suffer for 8 years. Francophone them. We not get global. Come up with street. They burn people their property. They not put the government. We not go for money in King Gallery. We not thief the one. We not go for market. We not burn them. We not be do so. We not be do. We survive this stop. With the rest. We not so the one stop school. We not get hurt. We not play that langa. Francophone. We not the langa. We don't enjoy that for nothing. We just the premier of power enter inside president move with the them. It come for table the more talk. We don't be so over likey. Na lie. We can't fight. The government go sue the fool. So the fight now for waiting. From what the langa. We don't get vision. Since 20 crisis starts, you never hear they don't go broke. Any man is store for thief. We fight for something. Una come up with road. Whoa. You go border. What did people that property get for do crisis? What did people that property get for do crisis? How many days will now stop? So now hungry. That's the truth. I tell you because well, una hungry now stop and are true. Una franco for the shame. Vous les francophones, nous pas honte. Tu n'es pas honte. Les francophones, tu n'es pas honte. We Anglophone, on need the shake. Il a un blog roto, même bono cap, go jeep party. Il a un blog roto, bono cap, ou game bonga for limbe. Una go broke for their store. Now fight that. Now the bond for their property. If una don't so one fight to fight, una go down there. If una no A to D, where you enter inside A to D, or you are left, you climb that hill, you meet up on your house, you on top that hill. Una go meet up, una wait till your post and try. Una the born people their place. Take thing they will loot for their property. Atanga himself, if una stop, if hungry stop, una go stop fight. And not true. Una the craze on head. More than not be a nonsense. Una pass for Maransa, una get 3 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, una begin concentrate. Langa people. They born people their places.
Barrister Mbesha.
I think we have all watched the 2 videos. If there's nothing I can comment, I will start with the last guy. That guy who is talking there, calling one a francophone and so on and so forth. He speaks for himself. He doesn't speak for Ambazonians. It is not the duty of Ambazonians to lecture the people of Cameroun how to prosecute their own freedom. We are not doing as Anglophones, as you call it. We have resisted in our own way, and we have been resisting, we continue to resist. What they do over there is their cup of tea. There are so many ways to kill a rat without cutting the tail. And so if they are doing it their own way, it's not us to go and tell them not to do it. They don't need to bear any insults from us. But I said earlier when we started this evening that Cameroon is learning a lot from Ambazonia. And most other countries around Central Africa, if not the world, are learning how to prosecute a revolution silently. And so we hope that they have learned a lot. Then you take Mr. Chiruma's audio and video. What he says there, if you analyze what he's saying, you will not come out to the same conclusion that young man has come. Chiruma has not said, Chiruma said, they say the people of Cameroon want their freedom. If you don't release these guys, the people will take the action. Not he, Chiruma. So he's talking for a large following. He's talking for people who voted for him. He's talking for the majority, if not all, who are angry, who are disappointed with the revolution, with the type of government that they have. And so, as I said, he cannot speak like that for nothing. He has actually some strategy. as a politician. You see, he's talking the posture of a politician. The young man addressing that, I don't know what he is. I don't know whether he's talking as an activist, as a journalist, or like any other person. That's just a private audio. He's not even talking on a platform like we are sitting here and talking on Ambazonian radio. And so Chiroma, I said earlier, every word that comes out of his mouth, take it with care. Because Chiroma knows that the world is watching him. Chiroma knows that everybody in Cameroun is watching him. They count on his words. And he will not have said it before, utter those for nothing. You know, utter those words for purpose of jokes. It has taken him a number of days to make that statement since the other guy was declared, since he was sworn in. What comes out of Chiroma's mouth with care. He's not a joker, he's a politician. He's a politician with a difference. Because even the mighty are on the people. Mr. Atanganji, speaking for the government, speaking for their so-called Minat, with all the threats that he has and all the weapons that he carries along with it, he has not been able to go and arrest Chiroma. Chiroma dared them. This is me in my house in Garawa. Come and arrest me. They have not arrested him. We have heard the story that Chiroma is not in Garawa. Maybe true, maybe false, but his house has not been raided. The house where he's supposed to house him, it has not been raided by anybody. Why? Where are all the bees in the world? Where are all the gendarme companies and legions in the north and in the south? Where are all the military guys, colonels, generals, and all what they have there? Why have they not raided his house? They are afraid. They know the consequence if they did it. So I think again, Chiroma is no longer just a minister. He's a statesman. He's being watched closely from Paris, from London, from Washington, D.C., and beyond. And so we hope the people listening to him, he will release, I believe, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, early this morning, I saw people being released already. They were asked to go home. I think they started releasing them. Why? Why, you must ask? Are they afraid of Chiroma? Maybe not. But why? Is it a coincidence? No. He gave 48 hours. Let us see what happens after 48 hours. He didn't tell us what will happen if they didn't do it, or if they did it. But again, if everybody was released tonight, would that be the end of the crisis, the end of the problem they have during and after the election in Cameroun? Certainly not. Let us watch carefully. Let us comment with caution. Let us be careful what we say when we refer to what Chiroma is doing. Again, Ambazonians are only observers. We're only good neighbors. We wish them the best. Sooner or later, there will be a Chiroma somewhere, or someone appointed by him, or a certain Paul Biyas, or somebody appointed by him. We're waiting for them. If they don't have one appointed, both of them can jointly come and meet us, and we'll end the crisis. That's what concerns us. Because a bad neighbor is a bad neighbor. Over to you.
A bad neighbor is a bad neighbor. All right, Barrister Mbesha, let's head over to the voice of Ambazonia. The voice of Ambazonia had something for us today. Says that the political standing of Joshua Osih, once seen as the last, in quote, Anglophone hope within the Cameroon Social Democratic Front, has collapsed under the weight of disillusionment and disconnect from the realities of Southern Cameroon. His recent performance in Bamenda, the historic cradle of the SDF, confirmed what many Ambazonians had already concluded. Osih has lost the trust of the people he once claims to represent. Osih's earlier promise to resolve the Ambazonian war within 100 days now appears as political bravado without substance. Throughout his public engagement, he has avoided directly addressing the Ambazonian question, consistently refusing to acknowledge the legitimacy of the struggle or to name the conflict for what it is. His caution, interpreted by supporters as neutrality, has come to symbolize a vision and fear at a time when moral clarity is demanded. Observers within the resistance movement say Osih's approach mirrors the failures of his predecessors, John Frundi, whose 1992 campaign was widely viewed as the closest the SDF came to transforming Cameroon's political landscape. Frende's decision to seek validation abroad rather than consolidate legitimacy at home marked a historic turning point that led to party's decline, a pattern now repeated by Osih, who has sought political acceptance from Yaoundé and Western backers rather than from his own people. Now, this editorial's perspective within the Voice of Ambazonia International argues that this repeated dependence on foreign validation, particularly from Western liberal circles, has long undermined genuine African self-determination. It highlights the record of U.S. democratic administrations from Bill Clinton to Joe Biden as consistently aligned with Europeans, especially French geopolitical interests in Africa. Well, according to this view, while Democrats have projected an image of inclusiveness, their African policies have often mirrored those of France, prioritizing stability for regimes over justice for oppressed people. In contrast, past Republicans' diplomacy in Cameroon is remembered more favorably among Ambazonian activists. The previous U.S. ambassador appointed under the Republican administration is credited with directly engaging local voices and challenging state abuses during the peak of the conflict. His stance, despite threats, repeatedly and reportedly inspired renewed hope amongst those who saw international recognition as a path towards legitimacy. Let's hear the voice of Ambazonia.
Good day to all freedom-loving people of Ambazonia, from the home front to every corner of our great diaspora. Today is Monday, November 10th, 2025. This is an editorial from the Voice of Ambazonia International, truth in resistance and clarity in crisis. There are moments in history when silence is not prudence, it is betrayal. Joshua Osih, once seen as the Anglophone hope within the Social Democratic Front, has written his own political farewell, through arrogance, detachment, and a failure to feel the pain of a wounded people. He promised to solve the Anglophone crisis in 100 days, yet never explained how. He claimed to understand the suffering of a bleeding nation, yet never called the wound by its name, Ambazonia. And when his own people demanded truth and accountability, he offered neither remorse nor recognition. In Bamenda, the cradle of the SDF, Osih revealed a politician who had lost his compass of truth. He avoided the hard questions, refused to stand with his people, and hid behind a veil of neutrality, mistaking fear for wisdom. Even Issa Shiroma Bakari, the loud trumpet of the regime, showed more boldness on the same ground where Osih feared to stand. That day, Ambazonians began writing his political obituary in their hearts. To understand Osih's fall, one must return to 1992. That year, John Fru Nindi, the Lion, had won the people's mandate. But instead of forming a government in Biyas, the legitimate capital of southern Cameroons, he flew to the United States to attend Bill Clinton's inauguration. He believed that Washington's Democrats would help him unseat their European cousins in Yaoundé. That illusion became betrayal. That betrayal became downfall. And that downfall became the sad refrain that followed him to his grave. One of Fru Nindi's advisors had warned him, leadership cannot borrow legitimacy from foreigners, it must grow from the soil of its own people. Joshua Osih never heard that warning. He walked the same road of self-deception. And history, my brothers and sisters, has no mercy for repeat offenders. Africans have too often confused the sweet speeches of the Democrats toward African Americans with genuine love for Africa. From Bill Clinton to Barack Obama, and now Joe Biden, the line has never changed. There is no true African interest within the Democratic establishment. Their inclusiveness ends at America's shores. And let us never forget, the genocide in Rwanda happened under the watchful eye of Bill Clinton and under the supervision of France. While hundreds of thousands of Africans were slaughtered, Paris and Washington looked away, a silent complicity that still haunts the continent today. The Democrats never wanted the end of slavery, they only wanted to manage it better. And every African politician who runs to Washington seeking validation comes back with the same empty handshake, sympathy without substance. For southern Cameroons, that lesson has been bitter but true. No foreign party will ever liberate a people who have not defined their own destiny. Look at the contrast. The current US ambassador to Yaoundé, under Joe Biden, attends regime events, smiles for photos, and befriends the same government accused of genocide. It is diplomacy in the service of paralysis, but his Republican predecessor stood tall like a lion. At the height of the war, he spoke directly to Ambazonian voices, demanded accountability from Yaoundé, and received death threats for his courage. That man restored hope to our people. He made them believe that freedom is not a crime. If politics is about interests, then Ambazonians in America should know by now where truth can still be spoken without fear, in the Republican camp. Whatever France decides the Democrats follow. France destroyed Libya, Barack Obama executed the order. Today, the same French president who led that chaos faces justice, yet the Democrats have never apologized. Donald Trump, whatever one may think of him, had the courage to tell Europe to face the truth about Ukraine. Joe Biden rushed to repeat the same blind loyalty. It is a pattern France commands the Democrats obey, and Africa pays the price. The verdict is now clear. Southern Cameroun has closed its political door to Joshua Osih. His relevance died the day he chose ambition over justice. He is not a bridge builder. He is the man who watched the bridge collapse while standing on both ends, pretending to be balanced. History does not forget those who could have spoken but chose silence. In the chronicles of Ambazonian liberation, Osih's silence will echo louder than all the speeches he ever gave. Like Frunendi before him, he will be remembered not for what he accomplished, but for what he refused to do, and for the dream he helped to bury. This was MC Crichton for the Voice of Ambazonia International. Truth in resistance and clarity in crisis. Let us never fear to name betrayal, even when it wears elegant clothes. Freedom cannot grow where silence has planted its roots. May God bless the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. May God bless all her sons and daughters who still believe.
So within this context, the editorial positions Joshua Osih's fall not merely as an individual failure, but as a symbolic end of a political generation that sought reform within the framework of Cameroon's unity rather than the restoration of Ambazonian sovereignty. It also contends that the SDF, once a symbol of democratic resistance, has now become a cautionary tale of ambition, a lifting principle. And of course, today across Southern Cameroon and its diaspora, the sentiment is clear. Joshua Osih's political relevance has faded. His reluctance to align with the aspiration of a people in struggle has rendered him an outsider in the very movement that once looked to him for leadership. Barrister Mbesha, what would you say about this?
I think history will have it down that for the 30 plus years of the existence of the SDF, that party had two leaders, Frunendi and Joshua Osih. History will document that these two individuals marked the beginning and the total downfall of the so-called SDF. It marks what type of leadership it had, and it tells a lot about the character of the individuals who led this party at different times. Who was Frunendi? He was a minted politician, a hungry politician created to have an office. He was not a real politician in the sense, because he didn't even have the backbone of Issa Chiroma that we just talked about. Frunendi came from Norway. He's a bookseller, just a small bookseller. He didn't have his yearly outcome from his book, a BB bookshop. I'm not sure it was even up to 500,000 a year. So he was basically a poor guy. He has struggled to be relevant. Just campaigning to be the president of a section of the CPDM in Mbesha. He was defeated by his own brothers, whoever he was, who became the prime minister. He changed gears and tried to become the president of the PWD football club. It didn't work. Then he minted himself into a politician and became a presidential candidate and failed. He won, no doubt about that. But he didn't even mount the resistance. When they locked him up in the house, they declared whatever thing they call emergency in town. What was his resistance? Zero. He lay in his house. We are told they gave him tons of money. Story told by Achille Achu, his own man, to get him keep quiet. He kept quiet. So when he traveled to the United States for the installation of President Bill Clinton, was he coming here to become relevant politically back home? No. If he thought so, he was making a big mistake. Foreign governments don't make opposition leaders politicians back home. By the time he came here, they had already installed a man who defeated him. So he was coming to America just to be relevant. He wanted to at least sit on the high table with somebody. But he sat, not as a head of state. He was received by an important guest, but not as a political leader, not as a leader of Cameroon. One will ask, what happened to him? What happened to Frundi at the end of the day? Is that he packed and left. He left the people who minted him into a politician. He left Bamenda and went and settled in Yaoundé. Why did he tell the Takumbe woman who defended him when he was in need? Above all, what did he say to the chicks people who were killed during the launch of the so-called SDF? He said goodbye to them and left. There was no ceremony, but he could turn around and thank Paul Biya for giving him money to bury his dead wife, Rose. There was no thing to say about the 6 dead young men. Also steps in Mr. Osih Joshua in the name of a leader of the SDF. But when Joshua came into it, it was already dead. What he was inheriting was a carcass of a party. The party had died. They had fallen from 40-something members in parliament to barely 3, 4, 5, where he is one of them. And so you see a man with political relevance, absolutely nothing. He was just digging his own grave. And what did he do? He tried to say that he wanted to be a candidate to run for the presidency. Osih knew himself, from his heart of hearts, that he was not going to win. He was never going to win. But what was his goal? His goal was to make money out of it. Because once a presidential candidate, they give him money. Once a presidential candidate, a lot comes in for you. He already knows that. And will be surprised if the next government of Paul Biya does not include Joshua Osih. And so these are criminal mental politicians. But Joshua Osih, who went even to campaign in so-called Indian, his own native place, he's supposed to come from India. The SDF has never won any election there. Not India. His political capital is Douala. Minted in Douala to become a politician. So, where is the SDF era? What shall we say about it when historians write their books? They will lament that this was the hope of the people. People had hoped a lot in the SDF, but they have been disappointed a million times over. The last time we heard of relevance in the SDF was when a certain Wilbur went to parliament. He was still an SDF parliamentarian. I spoke for the last time in the name of the SDF about Ambazonia. And what happened to Wilbur? I remember that Frundi was still alive. I asked him, what did you say when Wilbur? I said, he responded, well, he didn't take permission from me to go and say what he said. And what followed? Osih was still in parliament. They issued a bench warrant to arrest Wilbur. In the presence of Osih, since then, Wilbur fled into exile. With him, the SDF. But Osih remained in Yaoundé in parliament with the dead body of the SDF, looking for where to put it, to bury it. And so that's the story. Is the SDF still about that thing? Zero. During this campaign, Osih purported to launch his campaign in Bamenda. What was he going to say in Bamenda? What was he going to say about the dead people who were killed, the 6 children who were killed there? What was he going to tell the Takumbe women who have been protecting them? Since he went back to Yaoundé and to Douala, how many times has he visited them? How many masses? How many masses has he offered for the dead people there? Zero. And so this is the death of the SDF. And above all, this is the SDF under Mr. Osih that had the balls to sign a petition urging the government of the United States to arrest all Ambazonians for protesting for supporting Ambazonians for self-defense. And this is a very Osih, who for his election campaign that he knew he was never going to win. He said if he won, he would solve the problem in 100 days. If he could not solve the problem for 7 years when he was in parliament, just to bring it for a debate, the idea of solving it in 100 days, 200 days was a sham. Osih thought that he could deceive people. You can lie to people all the time, most of the time, but you're not going to lie to everybody every time. People have realized what it is. So be the eulogy of the SDF. They are dead politically. Osih is not relevant. He might join the government of Paul Biya. That's his choice. And I would advise him to do that. Because his whole interest in politics is to make money. He didn't enter politics to do anything. Because even though Osih could, the chairman could say power to the people and people will clap, I never heard Osih raise any crowd anywhere in the world in Cameroon in the name of SDF since he took over. So he died with the SDF. He was buried in the same grave politically. And so that you see, he didn't have the opportunity to solve the problem in 100 days. He will never have it to even solve it in 10 years. So these are people who were minted to make money out of politics. They have made the fortune that they needed. And so they can retire home or leave whatever thing they have for their families. For as far as Ambazonia is concerned, the SDF died gradually, but what he inherited from the Nifrundi was the carcass, was the coffin to take to the final resting place of the so-called party. So be it. Bye-bye to you, Mr. Osih. Goodbye to the SDF. We wish you a safe burial until we meet again. Over to you.
All right, barrister. What a way to close! What a way to close your time with us here on Undaunted. And of course, I'm saying goodbye, not just bye bye. Goodbye to you, barrister, because I'm very sure that tomorrow would have you here. It's just the start of a new week, so hopefully stories will emerge and updates and reports will definitely come forth. And of course, we'll delve on it and create a platform that we can use to start off the week. Thank you so much for being here on Undaunted. It's at this juncture that we'll let you go because we know that we'll definitely see you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And right after the break, we'll head into Mali, where the AU chief is urging swift global action as Mali's jihadist violence and crisis escalates. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has voiced serious concern over the worsening security situation in Mali, urging the international community to take swift and coordinated action. His appeal follows a surge in jihadist violence that has left civilians increasingly vulnerable and the country's stability under severe threat. Over recent months, the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group Jama at Nasser el-Islam wal Muslim has intensified its attacks across Mali, targeting both civilians and security forces. The escalation has been accompanied by a blockade imposed on the capital, Bamako, in retaliation for the government's decision to restrict fuel sales in rural areas. This blockade has deepened the country's economic crisis, disrupting the supply of essential goods and paralyzing fuel deliveries to the capital. The African Union chief condemned the deteriorating humanitarian situation, noting that communities already struggling with poverty and displacement are now facing worsening conditions due to the ongoing violence and economic restriction. He also denounced the recent abduction of 3 Egyptian nationals by Jenim and demanded their immediate release, warning that such acts further endanger regional security and international cooperation efforts. As the security environment deteriorates, several countries, including France and the United States, have advised their citizens to leave Mali amid growing instability. In response to the escalating crisis, Yusuf called for stronger collaboration among nations, particularly in intelligence sharing and counter-terrorism operations, to curb the spread of extremist networks across the Sahel states. The African Union's statement underscores the urgency of a united global response to prevent Mali's security collapse from spilling over into neighboring states and destabilizing the wider countries. When we return right after the break, BRICS surge signals a new global order as Western economies stall. In a world once defined by Western dominance, the balance of power is shifting before our eyes. The BRICS coalition, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now expanded to include several new members, has emerged as a formidable force representing nearly half of humanity and close to 30% of global GDP. With the release of the International Monetary Fund's World Economic Outlook in October 2025, the evidence of this transformation is impossible to ignore. Well, according to IMF's latest figures, global growth is expected to hover around 3.2% this year, with the world's advanced economy, the United States, Japan, Germany, and other G7 members barely managing growth rates near 1%. By contrast, the BRICS bloc is expanding nearly 4 times as fast, driven by booming investment, rapid urbanization, and favorable demographics. The report released on the 4th of November and widely circulated in economic circles confirms what many analysts have long suspected: the tectonic plates of global finance are shifting and the epicenter is moving away from the West. The drivers of this change are as complex as they are powerful. Across much of the global South, young populations, growing middle classes, and ambitious state-led investment programs are creating a foundation for sustained expansion. India's digital revolution, China's manufacturing resilience, Brazil's agricultural dominance, and South Africa's resource wealth have combined to create a network of interdependence that now rivals the economic might of the industrialized North. Meanwhile, new members such as Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates bring energy, wealth, and financial muscles, further altering the global equation. For decades, the United States and its allies defined the rules of global trade, finance, and diplomacy through institutions such as the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organizations. But as the BRICS nations deepen their cooperation, building alternative development banks, establishing their own payment system, and increasingly trading in local currencies, the traditional order faces its most serious challenge since the end of the Cold War. The dominance of the US dollar, long seen as unassailable, is now being quietly but steadily eroded. This transformation is not just about members and numbers on spreadsheets, it is about who sets the terms of global engagement. As Western economies grapple with aging population, mounting debts, and sluggish productivity, BRICS countries are positioning themselves as engines of growth and innovation. The reconfiguration of global supply chains, accelerated by the pandemic and ongoing geopolitical tensions, has given these nations a central role in manufacturing, energy, and technology. For ordinary citizens, the implications are profound. In BRICS economies, rising demands and new investment promise millions of jobs, expanding infrastructure, and greater access to technology. For those in the West, however, the picture is more uncertain. Slower growth may mean stagnant wages, higher taxes, and a gradual erosion of living standards. Unless productivity rebounds, consumers elsewhere are likely to feel the effects. as production hubs shift, trade patterns evolve, and new currencies begin to share the global stage with the dollar and the euro. Yet, the rise of the BRICS bloc is not without challenges. Analysts caution that governance weaknesses, institutional instability, and debt vulnerabilities could still hamper progress. The IMF warns that global fragmentation spurred by protectionism and geopolitical rivalry poses a major threat to sustained growth. Even so, the momentum appears undeniable. What is emerging? Experts say is a truly multipolar world, one where no single nation or alliance can dictate the terms of global affairs. The G7 influence is waning, misplaced by a more diffuse, complex networks of powers bound together by trade, technology, and ambition. Whether this new order leads to greater cooperation or deeper division will depend on how deftly both blocs navigate the uncertain years ahead. For now, one thing is clear. The rise of the BRICS is no longer a distant possibility. It is the defining reality of our new global era. Now, that's it for tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the stories that made it to the headlines. Tonight on Undaunted, we told you that the streets in Bamenda business institutions and offices remain closed today, Monday, November 10th, 2025. Also tonight, we told you that abductions and arrests has marred French Cameroon's post-elections period as two of President-elect Issa Bakare's followers have been picked up by men in uniform. We told you tonight that Cameroon's opposition leader issues ultimatum after disputed election as Joshua Osih's political decline has marked the end of an era for the SDF. And on the African scene, we went to Mali, where the African Union chief has urged swift global action as Mali faces escalating jihadist violence and humanitarian crisis. While on the global scene, we told you that BRICS surge signals a new global order as Western economies soar. On behalf of Barrister Mbesha and a team of technicians behind tonight's production, we say good night and God bless.